Good morning.
Morning.
Okay.
Good morning.
Hey, Tim.
Really nice to see everybody.
Morning.
Good morning.
Tim, you let us know when we reach quorum, right?
I will do that. I'm checking that out right now,
Perfect.
Chairman Farouk.
We'll begin the meeting after it's acknowledged that we have quorum.
Kicked back the report and we did the quarterly report for information. And they said we needed
Chairman Farouk, I'm going to do a quick roll call if that's okay.
Yes, please.
All right, I'll just read through the board member list and just please holler if you're present. If you're not present, don't bother hollering. Honorable Kevin Mullen or representative. Honorable Rudy Salas or representative. Honorable Ana Caballero or representative. Honorable Canileva or representative.
Here.
Thank you very much. Cam Amari Davini. Cam, are you here?
Yeah, here.
That's it. Mark Arabo.
Here.
Thank you,
Here.
Mark.
Thank you.
Mr. Beitzer. Bob. Jamil Dada. Leanne Eager. Chairman Farouk is here. Dean Felk. Mr. Gallo.
Hey, Tim.
Hey, Mike. Jason Hayter.
Here.
Hey, Jason. Chris Hill. Gary King. Hillary Lentini.
Good morning, everyone.
Hey, Hillary. Mr. Levy.
Here.
Hey, Steve. Laura Long. James Mangia. I know James wasn't going to be here. Okay. Stephen Monteros. Bob Redlow. Nicole Rice. Bruce Stensley.
I'm here.
Bruce. Joseph Williams.
Here.
Gloria Young. Hi, Gloria.
I'm here.
John Brower. There he is.
Here, Tim.
Diane Factor. Rebecca Miller. I saw you, Rebecca.
Hi.
Chuck Riojas.
Present, sir.
Hello. Fabrizio Sasso.
Here, Tim. Hi.
Hey, Fabrizio. Jeremy Smith. Carol Zabin. Leonard Gonzalez. Reverend Trammell. Larry Frank. I saw you, Larry.
Good morning.
Aveen Sharma.
Hey, good morning, Tim. Right here.
Morning, Aveen. Secretary Galley or Jim Sunan.
Here, Tim, for Secretary Galley.
Hey, Jim. Director Rita Science. I see you, Rita. Good morning.
Hey, Tim.
I know that's not happening. Undersecretary Stuart Knox for the secretary.
I'm here, Tim.
Hey, Stu.
Hey.
Honorable Tony Thurman or representative.
Pete Callis for Tony Thurman.
Thanks, Pete. Director Joe Xavier. Joe, you here?
Good morning, Tim.
Wonderful. Morning. Mr. Chair, we are well within a quorum.
Perfect. And a few others have joined us. Jamil, I see, is wanting to be acknowledged. And then did we have Assembly Member Salas? Because I saw he did you
Yeah.
know?
I'm here, Assemblymember Salas. Thank you.
Morning,
Okay.
Rudy.
And was there anyone else? Oh, Bob.
Yeah, hi, everybody. Bob Redlow here.
Mr.
Barbara.
Redlow, we weren't going to start without you, Mr. Redlow.
Thank
It's
you.
not possible.
Yeah, and Bob Beecher here as well.
Hey, Bob.
Hey, good morning, everyone.
Leanne.
Yeah.
Leanne.
Hi.
Fantastic.
Okay, perfect. Well, good morning, everyone. It's great to see all of you again, even if it's virtually. Before we get started, I want to go over our critical notes for our meeting process today. This meeting is being conducted on the Zoom platform. Only board members and staff are participating on the Zoom platform itself. The public can view this meeting via live stream on our Workforce YouTube page. A link to the YouTube page, meeting agenda, and board packet information can be found on CWDB webpage, which is cwdb.ca.gov under State Board Meetings and Archives. A recording of this meeting will stay on our YouTube page. There is a slight delay between the Zoom meeting and the live stream of approximately 20 to 30 seconds. Public comment is now open and will be accepted via email at boardpubliccomment@cwdb.ca.gov. I will announce when the public comment period is closed, and I'm mindful to allow extra time for emails to come through. All emails will be read aloud during the public comment periods noted on the agenda and will be included in the meeting minutes as part of the public record. We can allow just 3 minutes for each comment, so please make them concise. The first public, we don't have any public comments currently, right? I have a note from a prior meeting, I think.
No public comments.
Okay, thank you. Board members, please be on mute, and I can recognize you if you type in speak in the chat function. You can also directly type in your questions in the chat if you prefer that approach. Please note that anything that is typed into the Zoom chat box will be included in the meeting minutes as part of the public record. So we're going to begin with action item, your consideration of approving the June 9th, 2021 board meeting summary. It starts on page 5 of the agenda packet. Are there any questions or discussion?
Move approval. Sorry, move approval.
Thank you, Jamil. Is there any public comments for this item? Okay.
No public comments.
Thank you. We can take a second.
I'll second it. Mike Gallo.
Mike Gallo. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Hi.
Are there any abstentions or nays? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Farouk, I believe that Megan has arrived for Kevin Mullen, Assembly Member Kevin Mullen. And I believe also that Senator Caballero or representative has joined us.
And Senator Connie Leyva has also joined us as well.
Fantastic.
Peter Ansel
Morning,
for
Senator.
Senator Caballero. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. So the motion carries unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Okay, we will now proceed to our labor agency update. I want to introduce someone who needs no introduction, Stuart Knox, and congratulate him on being reappointed by Governor Gavin Newsom as Undersecretary of California Labor and Workforce Development Agency. As you may know, Julie Su officially joined the Biden administration as Deputy Secretary of U.S. Department of Labor. I'd like to now invite Undersecretary Knox to please provide us an update on the new leadership at the State Labor Agency.
Great, thanks, Angela. Appreciate the time and want to thank all the members of the board for being here today. Just give a quick update. I won't take a lot of time. I know Tim has a lot on the agenda today, probably for updates of the funding, so I won't go into a lot of detail behind that. Also want to thank the governor and his leadership with the legislators to fund a good portion of workforce development programs for this year. And just to put it kind of in context, the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act funds approximately around $350 million right now that we receive in the federal government. And this year alone in the allocations from the state between general fund and some ARPA funds, we will collect or have access to over $300 million. In addition to the $350+ million from the federal funds. So we're pleased obviously to be able to work with the legislature and with the governor's office to get that funding. With that, the secretary will be arriving in California probably very shortly in the next couple weeks or so to be sworn in. And so for now, you have me as the acting secretary. And as Angela and many of you know, been around the system for about 28 years. So happy to be here, thrilled to work with Tim and team to get the funding moving as quickly as we possibly can. And I think Tim will have some updates on that as well. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Angela.
Thank you, Acting Secretary Knox. Are there any questions or comments for Acting Secretary Knox? Okay, we will, thank you so much for that update. We'll now proceed to our Washington, D.C. update. Federal extended unemployment benefits under the CARES Act are set to expire now as September approaches. I would like to invite our EDD Director, Rita Saenz, to give us an update on that and other resources that are available to affected workers.
Thank you very much. As you probably know by now, the federal benefits are ending on September 4th, except for the FedEd program, which will end on September 11th. This includes all of the federal programs that were funding employers, independent contractors, extending UI benefits for people who ran out. There are about 5 or 6 programs. The $300 per week is also going to be gone. And we know that this is going to affect a substantial portion of the people who are currently receiving benefits. The impact is going to be significant. We have been, for the last 2 months, educating people both on going back to work, on the availability of Cal jobs, the AJCCs, giving them information on what their work search requirements are, and any other programs that we feel can be useful to them. One of the things that a shout out to Labor Agency, particularly Abby Snay and Maurice, for working with us, and a number of other agencies in Health and Human Services. We have put out information on other benefits that are available to people once these UI benefits run out, including Covered California, Covered California CalFresh. In fact, our connection on our website has generated over 100,000 applicants to CalFresh over the summer. Also rental and utility use assistance via the Housing is Key, and encouraging people to submit their taxes for EITC, and a number of other programs that we have been both releasing in the press and doing joint press conferences with Health and Human Services Agency folks. And they really stepped up. This has been a significant campaign, and it's going to be very much needed at the end of the period when people are no longer receiving benefits. Obviously, people who were due benefits during the period before September 4th are going to still get those retroactively. And people who are in the process are still going to qualify for those, any benefits before September 4th. But this is going to have a significant impact on people. The usual rate of UI, the median rate of UI is $288 a week, which is going to be a substantial drop for a lot of people. So I want to thank all of the labor agency folks who have been using their digital outreach tools to help us to get this information out. Obviously, it's going to create a greater workload for you folks, which is wonderful. That's what we want. And it's going to create more application for the Health and Human Services and Covered California programs, which is also good news. So that's my update at this point.
Thank you, Director Saenz. Does anybody have any questions or comments for her? Okay, we will now. Was somebody trying to say something? Okay. We will now shift to other federal updates from our colleague, Jamil Dada.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think most of you are probably aware that California Senators Dianne Feinstein and Alex Padilla submitted a letter to the Senate leadership requesting that 100 billion in workforce development funding should be included in the reconciliation package, which is making its way through Congress. And we are the only state to have both of its senators make that request. So hopefully that will happen. As far as the Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act, I know all of you have been reading about it in the press, but this bipartisan infrastructure deal and the Build Back Better legislation are once-in-a-generation investments to create quality jobs and upgrade our nation's critical infrastructure. Local communities will need a skilled workforce trained and primed to make good on this historic investment. And the priorities for the White House of the Build Back Better will not only enhance the current system, but make it easier to support harder to serve populations, to access high quality training programs that lead to in-demand, good quality jobs. The president's plan will support bringing employers, training partners, labor unions, and worker serving organizations, along with community colleges and NGOs together to meet the needs of the local labor markets. Workforce boards are supposed to be on the front lines to support this historic transition from an economy devastated by COVID to shifting the paradigm of work. I was on a White House call 3 weeks ago that they had for national workforce leaders where they mentioned that the Build Back Better is proposed to be a long-term, a 10-year, $10 billion per year investment grounded in equity with the focus on infrastructure jobs. It has three main priorities that they referred to as funding buckets. First, it's for the next generation job training, jobs that we don't even know that exist now. We have to get our workforce prepared for that. Number two, targeting underserved communities, example, youth, the incarcerated, justice involved, public benefit recipients, individuals with disabilities, etc. And number three, strengthening the existing workforce development system by augmenting earn and learn programs that have proven to be effective. Example, apprenticeships, ensuring community colleges have the needed resources, and supporting career technical education and adult literacy. And finally, the Build Back Better is inherently rooted in the WIOA-funded workforce development system, as many Build Back Better activities are based on evidence from WIOA best practices. The White House sees this Build Back Better as an opportunity to strengthen the existing WIOA system while Congress continues their conversations about WIOA reauthorization. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that update. Are there any questions or comments for our colleague Jamil Dada's update? Okay, we will now proceed to the next agenda item, which is our 2021-2022 proposed state budget. In July, Governor Newsom and the legislature completed and the governor signed a $100 billion California comeback plan. It's the biggest economic recovery package in California's history. The plan expands the transformative work of our California Workforce Development Board, work that reflects the vision of a California for all and a high road economic recovery. Tim Rainey, our executive director, will walk us through what those investments are. And Joelle, if you could share screen to show the investments and a timeline for releasing these funds.
Great. Thank you, Chairman Farouk. Real quick, just a bit more framing, and I'll try to be fast. The state board's work on a broader workforce policy and programs has expanded over the last several years. As Chairman Farouk said, our high road agenda reflects Governor Newsom's vision of a California for all, prioritizing economic equity, job quality, climate resilience. The approach starts with deep industry engagement to create the conditions sector by sector to pull more workers and job seekers into good quality jobs. That related work is aligning the workforce system or programs regionally, investing in innovation and strengthening the role of community-based organizations, especially those mission-driven CVOs that are really connected to communities, in order to move more workers into pipelines, workers from disadvantaged communities into good quality jobs. So our intent hopefully not long-term, short-term, is that we reach a tipping point in the system when all workforce education and training investments across the board, federal, state, and local, are marching to that drum of the high road. So our tools for changing the world are at the State Workforce Board, coordination across our partner agencies at the state level, working with local agencies and local workforce boards closely, colleges and others. We do research and evaluation. You're going to hear about that a little bit, and investing in and learning from our initiatives and our program work. We have 5 units of the State Workforce Board. You're going to hear from each of those actually in a bit: administration, policy and research, program and innovation, and then the high road field. And these are organized and linked together and communicate and are integrated as almost like a think do tank. We want our policy, our program investments, our research and our evaluation work to really kind of hang together and inform each other. So the 21-22 budget, in fact, triples the work of the State Workforce Development Board in terms of programs, nearly $330 million in additional program funding. But there was broader investments, as Acting Secretary Knox pointed out, with the Employment Training Panel, the Community College Chancellor's Office, the Community College System, Division of Apprenticeship Standards, the Employment Development Department, Workforce Services Branch of EDD. So there's a great deal of investment in workforce education and training to really impact workers and sectors around economic recovery, an equitable and just economic recovery. So Joelle put the chart up, and you can see just walking through the State Workforce Board's pieces. Give me a little bit, just a second to kind of walk through this because I think it's helpful. We're going to be posting this on our website if we haven't already. I think we're still waiting for a couple of changes and for Acting Secretary Knox to give us the final go-ahead. But real quick, this fall, probably October, high road training partnership money is going to go out. I know a lot of you are working on these, pulling these partnerships together. $10.5 million. This is WIOA discretionary funds. It'll be a closed application only for existing programs because we want to very quickly get money out in the field, expand those partnerships and the scope of their work, and to get training to more workers as quickly as we possibly can. So it'll be a closed application for existing high road training partnerships going out in October, 10.5 million. The Accelerator Fund, Workforce Accelerator Fund, which I think a lot of you are familiar with, in the fall, also probably October, $10.5 million. This will be an open solicitation, competitive, for any organization that really fits the approach to Accelerator, which is focused on innovation and new approaches to accelerating positive outcomes for workers from disadvantaged communities. Anybody can apply except for-profit organizations. Sorry about that. December, the winter, regional equity partnerships. This is building on our current regional plan implementation work that we've been doing for the last 5 or 6 years. It's called Regional Equity Partnerships in the budget. These are general fund dollars. 25 million will be going out, as I said, probably December, this winter for sure. A closed application again for existing regional planning units, led by local workforce boards in very close alignment and partnership with the community college system. The next is also in the winter, probably January, but it'll be going out on a rolling basis over several months. High road training partnership funding, $100 million in general fund money. This is an open solicitation. That'll be probably going out between January 2022 and June 2024, as I said, on a rolling basis. January, also this winter, prison to employment. We got additional money for the prison to employment program in the budget, general fund money, $20 million will be going out. It's a closed application. We have existing prison to employment partnerships in every corner of the state. Those are based on our regional planning units. So those dollars will be going out. Solicitation, rather, will be going out in January. These are all solicitations that will be released, not money on the ground. Solicitations released. In spring, probably March, also on a rolling basis, between March 2022 and June 2024, high road construction careers. And this is 3 funding streams, $25 million in new general fund money, $10 million in new general fund money that's focused on low-income housing and affordable housing, and then the balance of our SB1 funding, $10 million. So a total of $45 million in high road construction careers money going out on a closed application basis. Again, moving money as fast as we can to existing high road construction careers partnerships. And those are very established, again, in every corner of the state. And importantly, those will be creating pipelines for new apprentices, especially as we invest in building stuff in the state's infrastructure, both state investments in infrastructure, but also our anticipated federal investments in expanding infrastructure development. Breaking barriers to employment. In the spring, we'll be going out, spring 2022, probably April, general fund money, $25 million. This is an open solicitation. Partnerships have to include at least one workforce board and a community-based organization. So there is legislation that is pending that could change the requirements around this grant in a positive way. But currently, it's based. It's very much like the previous Breaking Barriers to Employment from AB 1111. For those of you who are familiar with that, $25 million in the spring. And then finally, we haven't decided when this funding is going to go out yet. We've got some more work to do on it. We may have a little bit of discussion about it later today around aging. Certified nurse assistants, $14.5 million through the State Workforce Board in general fund monies. Again, not sure when we're going to put that out. Still have some development to do on that. So that's it, Chairman Farouk. Sorry about taking so long on that. Lots to talk about.
No, that's all very encouraging news. Thank you so much for that information. And that document is going to be on our website if it's not already. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. If it is up, please let us know the link. I got some requests about that. So if you have a question or comment, okay, we'll first start with John Brower.
Just a couple of things, Tim. I think I would be interested. I don't know if it's possible that at a future board meeting to have the community college come and basically articulate how for those regional planning unit dollars and those high road training partnership dollars that they are going to be accessing, sort of how they're going to fit into meeting industry demand, maybe by sector and or regionally, how they plan to structure those monies going out to kind of do that and build off of the state board's promotion of high road training partnerships in general. And so for those two, at some point, maybe having a conversation with Shinny or somebody coming to a board meeting, if that's possible, to just talk about how those monies are going to go out and build off of what we've already got going on, as opposed to any kind of low road piece. And then the second piece is, I wanted to reiterate the kind of observation I made at the executive committee, which is that CNA's jobs have often been very low road jobs. They've had, over the course of a year, you may have 100% turnover at a particular employer. They don't pay particularly well, have real, often have no connection to a higher career pathway relative to healthcare. So I think at some point, again, I'm just kind of stating that I hope as these dollars go out and what gets built is actually to build more high road pathways and improve the job quality of those particular jobs going forward.
Chairman Farouk, just a quick response, if that's okay.
Yes, please.
So on the CNA, John, it's an excellent point, and we're actually going to have a little bit more conversation about that later in the agenda. We've got an opening to delve a little bit deeper into that. Agree on the community colleges, so I'll work with the chairman to set that up for the next board meeting. I think it'd be great to hear from the community colleges. Shani Weber couldn't make it to this board meeting, otherwise we would have had some more conversation about it. But I will say, we're leveraging, it's the colleges coming in as partnerships with both local workforce boards and our high road training partnerships and high road construction careers. On HRTP and HRCC, colleges are already partners, actually on very many, if not all of our high road construction careers, which is great. They're not playing the lead role in terms of getting the funding, but they're playing very, very value add roles, working on moving to industry valued credentials, credit for prior learning is really important. We want to get participants college credit if we can, because we think that really contributes to longer term educational attainment. If we can do that for the workers who are going through our training programs. Remediation, especially in the trades, when we're talking about math skills, so that we can get our participants up to the levels required to pass those entrance exams for apprenticeship programs that can be very high level math, and other things. But we can bring that back to the board and have more discussion, John. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Tim. We'll now shift to Senator Leyva.
Thank you very much, Farouk. Angelo, sorry. I had a question, Tim. You said there was going to be $20 million for prison employment, having 2 prisons in Senate District 20. Just curious if you know how much of that money will go to the San Bernardino area.
All of it, Senator Leyva.
Oh.
No. Sorry, I wish I would do that for you. We don't know yet how it actually will be distributed across the state. When in the previous prison to employment program, it was based on need. So the coalitions that include CDCR programs and community-based organizations said to us what they felt the demand was going to be in terms of providing resources and services and training. So we'll have to make an assessment of where the need is, and then distribute the dollars according to that. But the dollars will go where most need is, and I suspect in the Inland Empire there's great need there.
Great, thank you, Tim. And I would just put in a big plug for the women's prison in Chino. There are only 2 women's prisons in the state, and just sometimes I feel like the women's prison gets overlooked a little bit. There's definitely need at the men's prison too, but just a plug for the women's prison. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Leyva. Absolutely.
Thank you, Senator Leyva. We'll now go to Bob Beecher.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Angelo. I wanted to tag on to what John said. Tim, I noticed that the funding for the CNA piece comes in the summer of 2022. I just want to highlight that there is no single greater need at the moment than nursing staff across the state, across the country. The nursing population has been devastated by the pandemic, by people working relatively low-paying jobs at high personal risk to themselves and their families. And the diminished nursing population has made it very difficult for nursing homes, acute care hospitals, behavioral health hospitals to fill beds, because they have staffing ratios, and unless they can pull staff in, they can't fill the beds. And it's a crisis that has not gotten enough attention in the state of California, in Los Angeles County, or in the nation, but it is a real and brutal crisis in our healthcare system at the moment. So whatever we can do to get people on the path of being nursing assistants, and then LVNs and RNs on a real path to high-paying professional jobs in the nursing industry, we should be doing as quickly as possible. And I know that you've got something later on in the agenda as well. So, yeah.
Thank you, Bob.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Well, we'll now go to Bob Redlow.
Thank you. I'm sure I'll save my comments on CNAs for later. We can have that discussion under that part of the agenda. I made a suggestion in the executive board about, because we have so much funding, it would be helpful to have an ombudsperson to help coordinate all the different funding programs, because I think people in the workforce boards and the regions are confused on which funds to apply for and when. And I think it would be, as we grow, Tim, I think that would be something at least we should look at. And my second comment, as we talked about in the executive board as well, was a concern that we had about only funding for a number of these programs, existing programs, in order to get the money out. But yeah, I made the comment and I'll make it again. In healthcare, things are changing incredibly fast in delivery. For example, the governor just signed a bill for community health workers to be reimbursed under Medi-Cal. That's going to open the floodgates for training programs and entry-level positions in the healthcare, as well as peer specialists. So we have just a ton of training programs coming out in the next 2 or 3 months. They're going to need some help and funding that are going to be great entry level and are going to help our healthcare delivery in the state. And so I want to make a pitch that although you're looking at existing programs, that these programs are not hard to set up and they'll need some existing funding. And we can probably have that funding applications together by January of 2021.
Great.
Thank you, Bob. Joseph Williams.
Thank you. I wanted to just go back to the community college conversation for a moment. I've served as a local trustee of a multi-college district for the last 9 years, and I've been on the California Community College Board of Governors for the last year. And my observation is that I think that if we can encourage more board-to-board conversations, so trustee and workforce development board member conversations, we can enhance the partnerships that the workforce boards have with the colleges, and just getting increase in trustee capacity to understand workforce development. And so if there's a way that this body can, provide some TA to local boards on, or just encouragement to do more outreach with trustees, and then getting the chancellors to do the same, to get trustees to reach out to the boards. Even CWA inviting trustees to be a part of the education sessions that they have. And the more we can get educators and employers together, it would really go a great, I think it enhance the system in getting some of the things that you're trying to accomplish to stick and to really get at scale, because you need the policymakers to understand some of the issues and how they increase the accountability. So just wanted to give you that as something to think about and see if we can provide some support and encourage those kind of conversations.
Thank you, Joseph. Those suggestions are noted. Thank you. We'll now go to Carol Zabin, please. You need to unmute, please, Carol.
Sorry. I don't know if this is the time, but will we or can you now talk about that 600 million that isn't workforce board money, but is about community transition, and so relates at least to some of the HRTPs and other board activities, and how they're going to coordinate and relate?
Thanks, Carol, and good to see you here. I'm going to make sure that we mark you present for the board. I want to hand that off to Acting Secretary Knox if he's still on. There he is. Do you mind, Stuart?
Sure. Yeah.
Great. Thanks.
Thanks, Carol, for the question. So basically, we're still working through the trailer bill language on that, and so if we get, we're hopeful that we'll get across the finish line with the legislature in the next 2 weeks or 3 they have left to act upon that. So the trailer bill, once moved through, hopefully, the intent there is to work that through the workforce services branch in terms of the funding side. The intent is 10 plus regions within California will be funded for planning dollars, essentially. And I say 10 plus because we're still waiting for some labor market information division information on that. So once we have that, those planning grants will be put out to 10 plus regions. Once the money goes out, which could range between $50 and $65 million for planning purposes, then that funding, those local intermediaries, much like the HRTPs, and probably will be parties to, will play a role of defining what their needs are locally and within those regions. Then the funding, the remaining funding, which is a fairly healthy amount, anywhere between $535 to $550 million, will be available for what those implementation grants will look like. We will work with the workforce services branch. So the overarching entities are labor agency, OPR, Office of Plan and Research, and GoBiz, in defining what that will look like for those regions, and then the funding will be deployed for those purposes. Generally, I would say because it's ARPA funding, we do have logistics around COVID-19 response to this because it needs to relate to those communities with the most need around COVID-19, but it also is looking at resilience within those economies regardless. So we want to see a diversification within those economies and with a carbon neutral viewpoint as well. And so that will be kind of the play that we will make at the state level to make sure that those funds relate to the governor's and the legislature's intent, but also following the ARPA guidelines. So there will be training opportunities for development stages within that, in addition to what we'll look at is how those partnerships relate with HRTP and all of the funding sources that the state board and ETP are putting out to make sure that we're leveraging all of those resources, in addition to the community college system, to John's point, John Brower's point, making sure that we're leveraging all pieces to the puzzle. And so it is a great opportunity for California to move, $600 million out to the local areas for an economic and workforce development strategy, with economic development being the overarching guiding principles.
And is there an opportunity in the oil dependent regions to,
yes,
for any safety net stuff that?
Yes, that is built into it as well.
Okay. Yeah, because we do have laid off refinery workers in the HRTP I'm working on, but it's happening all over.
Oh, love to know more.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you both. Our next question is from Hillary Lentini regarding the CNA future discussions and planning. Are we ensuring that the healthcare business community has a seat at the table since it knows the future of the healthcare industry in the most detail? Tim?
Yes, and I think if that's okay, Chairman Farouk, is let Aida, when she does the update on the high road, talk a little bit more about the healthcare industry and the approach there.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you both. Our next question or comment is from Leonard Gonzalez.
Hi, good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's good to see the initiatives that are coming back out, Tim, with you and your staff and putting it all together. So just a question that I have is as there's going to be funding opportunities for existing programs, HRTPs, also the regional HRCC partnerships, and then also for new entities that want to apply. But really, my question is for those initiatives that we funded in the past, and those entities, those programs and organizations. I don't know if you or your staff have put it together already, but is there a possibility that we can see some performance or outcomes for those specific programs, how they've been performing, placements, things of that nature? And that way, as we go through this process, we could potentially identify some best practices as you procure some new entities with the new resources and initiatives.
Yeah, thank you, Leonard. I really appreciate the question. And it's not unlike the question that was asked by Senator Caballero at the last meeting, wanting to look at data. So what we proposed was to come back at a later board meeting and talk about sort of data and the framework for how we're looking at data and reporting it and analyzing it. For the high road training partnerships and high road construction careers specifically, most of the money that we've invested in those programs has gone out recently. So what we can share with you are the metrics we're looking at, both for participants, but also around industry engagement, which are going to be a little bit more on the qualitative side. And we can provide you preliminary numbers on how many people we intend to serve, what those metrics are, and a little bit about where we are with the current program. So I might get you and me and Aida on the phone at some point and kind of think through how we might want to present that to the board, if that's okay.
And just to follow up, Tim, with regards to that, with those programs, especially as it relates to registered apprenticeship and those links. So with those programs, are they registering the trainees with the Division of Apprenticeship Standards pre-apprenticeship program?
Also, yeah, we're looking at that. It's a really great question. So that the high road construction careers is based on the, as you know, Leonard, the MC3 curriculum, which is approved by the North American Building Trades Unions, and also by the U.S. Department of Labor. And so the intention there is to get the MC3 certificate and place people as apprentices as new apprenticeship slots open up. So the end game is to place people as apprentices. We are looking at, though, the registration of pre-apprenticeship programs with the Division of Apprenticeship Standards, because we want to track those individuals after they become apprentices. We want to know what the success is, first period, second period, third, or whatever, based on whatever craft it is. So we haven't registered all of our HRCC programs. We're still working with Eric Rude, who's the director of the Division of Apprenticeship Standards, to kind of think through what that will look like for our high road construction and careers partnerships. But we're on it.
Yeah,
and love to chat more about that with you too.
Yeah, maybe we can do a sidebar conversation, only because sure. I know the chief has actually implemented a process where so for apprentices, when we register them, we register them with the DAS1. So what the chief has done in his department is he has created a DAS1 PA, pre-apprenticeship. So for and you can actually register pre-apprentices as pre-apprentices, and then it will follow them from the program, their training program, into apprenticeship. So you kind of get all the data, for that specific individual from when they start at a community-based organization or training entity, and as they go into a specific apprenticeship program. So be happy to have that conversation offline with you.
Yeah, that's great. That's exactly what we want to look like. And sorry, I called Eric Rude director. He's chief, which sounds much better. Thank you, Leonard. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Leonard and Tim. And Gloria Young, our colleague, also wants to be a part of that discussion and supports our colleague Leonard's comments and see a list of those that are included. So thank you, Gloria, for that comment. If we could just remove the raised hand feature for Leonard and Carol, please, just so I don't get confused about future requests. We're now moving on to our youth policy update. Our colleague Joseph Williams has been working with Pradeep and his team to scope an approach on developing a youth policy agenda for our state workforce board. Joseph, if you have an opportunity, if you could please update us on the progress of your discussions.
Yeah, thank you. Several of board members had expressed some interest in having a youth committee of the state workforce board. And we've decided that we don't have the staffing capacity currently to pursue that. However, we're still moving forward with thinking through a strategy that will contain multiple elements and have some alternatives to actually having a committee. And so the focus will be to have a broad youth strategy that will consist of working across workforce entities that have been identified as a priority for the labor agency. We're exploring how we can use or different uses of local WIOA funding streams. There's a survey that's been sent out to local workforce boards to get a bead on some of the things that they're doing as it relates to youth. We'll also be analyzing the state board's investment and youth impact, also exploring youth apprenticeships and partnerships with the CDE, the California Department of Education. And so we're not reinventing the wheel. We're going to reach out to other experts in the area like the Department of Education, the California Youth Leadership Corps, New America Foundation, American Institute of Research, Policy Link, and then others will also have an opportunity to add voice to the effort. Where we're going with this again, we'll use a survey that's going out to local boards. We'll summarize what the survey data said, and then that will help us focus where the work will be done as it relates to youth services. Additionally, the local plans and the regional plans have been submitted, and so we'll be collecting information from, or staff will be collecting information from that and using that to inform the plan. And to keep the board updated, this will be a standing item on the agenda, and you'll receive updates on the progress as we move along. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. We know that youth have been disproportionately impacted during this crisis, so really appreciate your efforts. Are there any questions or comments for our colleague, Joseph Williams? Okay, we will now proceed to our initiative updates. As you know, we have several critical initiatives of our board, which are now been expanded by our California Comeback Plan. We're going to do a quick round of updates, beginning with our High Road Field Team, Aida Cardenas, Deputy Director for Equity, Climate, and Jobs.
Hi, everyone. I know we have a full agenda, so I will try to be brief. As you've heard, we're quite busy in the last board meeting reported that we expanded. I just put the list on in the chat. Expand our portfolio of high road training partnerships and our investments in high road construction careers. So we've been working really hard to support those partnerships in that work, and at the same time preparing to support additional work as we have these additional resources. And I just want to add that, you know, when we talk about the high road training partnership model and these regional models and partnerships, it's really about building out an infrastructure. So it's not just about, you know, Tim Rainey went through a training and what's the result for him, right? We need to ask the other questions: is how are we changing the way that workers interact with the labor markets? How are we changing the system, right, within industries and the process, and how workers and community members access jobs, ensure they're quality jobs, and have a pathway, a career pathway in these industries. So building out these infrastructures and these partnerships, and many of you do this every day, you know, it's not always easy, right? And it doesn't always happen fast, but we want to make sure that these investments are going to, the impact of these investments are going to outlive us, right, within industry. So our team's been focusing on, well, we've been working on staffing up just to catch up to the work that we had prior, but now with our work expanding, looking at expanding our industry conveners, so that we can have more expertise out in the field and working in the various industries. I just want to mention around, you know, healthcare, just know, even if that CNA pot of money is sort of deferred now as we try to look at all of these other resources we need to get out, doesn't mean healthcare is not being looked at. We're looking at all industries where there's need everywhere. So we're following over 40 different leads and new partnerships and working with them on how to best be set up and prepared for the January opportunity. Some may need a little bit more time, but many appreciate the time that they have now to really pull together their partnership to have a successful proposal and design their program. In terms of healthcare, thank you for raising the issue around the Medi-Cal issue, and that's going to create an opportunity, especially for community health clinics and others, to be able to staff up their organization. So we are working with and speaking with, actually working closely with Diane Factor, who's on our board, around that issue, and speaking to various different healthcare organizations and groups and partnerships that are coming together. We do have some healthcare projects within our current portfolio, which includes long-term care and also the Shirley Ware Education Center. But again, there'll be opportunities in that October funding, as well as in January. So we're just sort of going to be layering the funding opportunities. So certainly not ignoring the crisis that we have in healthcare and in various, as I mentioned, we're following over 40 different leads and opportunities for new partnerships, as well as supporting the existing ones. You know, many, as you can imagine, a lot of the support that the projects need is around how to, you know, we have to continuously pivot when we talk about worker training and looking at that pandemic and how we're going through this roller coaster of, do we do virtual training? Do we do in-person training? What workers are coming back? What are not? How do we prepare to reopen? And so it's a constant, it's a constant movement. So we're there to provide that technical support to those projects. I want to just give you a couple of real quick highlights, and I have one of them is a 3-minute video I wanted to share, but want to share that last Friday I attended a graduation of the first industrial manufacturing technician apprenticeship training for the first 20 journeymen in the state of California that have graduated from the program. It's a partnership with BYD and the Sheet Metal Air and Rail and Transportation Workers, Local 105, Antelope Valley College, also with staff from DAS. So I'm just gonna share a quick image. Hopefully I do this right. Of that event. Got a chance to also tour the facility. And so you see there, so the 20 apprentices and it's pictures of the buses and electric bus manufacturing. This apprenticeship program is is an HRTP, but not a funded HRTP, the apprenticeship piece. But we do have the HRTP funded program that's funding the design and registration, as Mr. Gonzalez mentioned, of the pre-apprenticeship program to go into this IMT project. And so had a lot of support from local elected officials as well. So again, just learning from the work that that folks already have going on and are really addressing the, the needs, which includes that pre-apprenticeship program so that they can really have success because of what, the math and the other sort of skill requirements from this apprenticeship program in a region that really needs it. And so I'm going to share a 3-minute video on a program under work, which is, and it's their PLACE program. This video was done pre-pandemic, but I just want to show the impact of the work and how we're, as things are reopening, we continue to support this project. But it really addresses public employment and barriers that folks have into civil service. And so we're really taking a lesson learned from their project and program that includes how to remove the barriers to access the jobs in terms of the testing and the process, but also case management in terms of retaining workers in public service. So I wanted to, let me share this and hopefully I do it right. Okay. So it'll be a 3-minute video.
In the morning when I get up and come to work, I actually want to come to work. I get happy. I'm like, what are we going to do today? What kind of things are we going to see? What can I do better than I did yesterday? I get to witness the doctors in action, and I feel like being a part of that team, even though I'm on the clerical side of it, we're still connected.
It's definitely a more mature feeling coming into my current position than I was before to be hired in a nature center. I love the scenery. I love the total vibe that I got here. One of the interview questions was, are you comfortable handling wild animals and reptiles, insects? And I was like, you know what? Yeah, I am very comfortable with that. That actually sounds pretty fun,
Well, 2 weeks in, I enjoy the variety. I enjoy working with my hands. I've done concrete work, channel cleanup, channel repair, maintenance. Started learning about the process of how water gets recycled and reused and comes back to our taps. It's pretty interesting. I have to say, I've never even knew about this job position until the PLACE program.
The PLACE program, which stands for Preparing Los Angeles for County Employment, is a pilot program that trains folks with high barriers to employment for entry-level positions that would allow them to serve their communities, but also give them an opportunity for a career path. These positions consisted of clerical with Department of Health Services, groundman's worker with the Departments of Parks and Rec and Beaches and Harbor, labor with Public Works, and custodian with Health and Services.
I found out about the program through my pastor. He's like, you need to go try to get this job for your family so you can have benefits for your children and a place for them to stay. Because right now I'm staying in a shelter. So I just jumped right on it and I came in and signed up. This program, they set you up, you learn, you train, and then they help you fill out the applications the correct way. And the program is doing a lot for me. It's very helpful.
The work program, they basically held my hand and provided these little refreshers. And it's so amazing because everything that I learned that we went over, I carry that with me.
It does give you a satisfaction, especially when people thank you and so forth, even though it's your job. It feels good to be acknowledged and to know you're doing something other than for your own self.
Now, especially with the benefits, I have benefits. I could say that it's a permanent job. I'm very proud of that. And I feel like my whole life has just elevated and I feel really positive.
I feel like I got what I've been wanting. Stability, bright future, equal treatment, and I feel motivated. This entry-level position has opened so many doors, not just for me, but also my family. Working for the county is a privilege, I wanted to give back to the community I grew up in. I'm an LA native, and I'm blessed to be here right now.
So I just wanted to share that video because I think, those are the stories we all, especially, your leadership and on the board is really about making an impact for folks on the ground. And we're lucky that, especially as a field team, we get to see a lot of this. It's a lot harder in the virtual setting, but even being out there at the graduation last Friday for the IMT certification sort of reminds you of this is the impact it's having, and it's long. We want to have a long-term impact, not just get them a job and then see a year later what other job they're going to need, but really what that path is. Putting these programs together takes that commitment from the employer side, takes the commitment from the support that the workers need to be successful. And so we've actually, one of our HRTPs is actually taking this model and working with the city of Los Angeles, right, in different departments to create access to jobs for communities with barriers or underserved communities. So we're excited about how we're learning from the models and their approaches and be able to expand and take this work to scale, not just in that region and in public service, but looking at, we look at that model for even public-private utility work and really create a community of practice for folks to share. So wanted to share that one as a highlight, but just know that there's a lot of work happening in the different projects, and we know we want to see results right away, but no, as Tim mentioned, a lot of these projects just came in either in April or in June, are starting. Some of them are just writing curriculum. We had a project in the fires, their whole training center and their equipment burnt down, right? And in the Sierras. So there's different challenges. So we're there to support through the work, but also want to be able to share. We know we need to share the impact. Just building out this, the partnerships is just really key to that. So I think I went over my time. We have some other updates in terms of work that we're doing in connecting some of the projects with other agencies and working closely with Pradeep's team and their partnership unit, and partnering with agencies like the Energy Commission, like the Air Resource Board. We've been very involved in how they're going to look at their future investments and include workforce development, and a variety of other agencies, but maybe I'll save that for another time.
Thank you, Aida. That's very inspiring. John Brower has a comment. John, you're on mute.
The one aspect of the HRTP that I think folks should be aware of is the ability to really take a lot of this stuff to scale. So the example that Aida brought, that I've been part of the LA City Initiative, and they've taken what they learned with the county and what work has been doing. And that initiative has the mayor's office, the city's human resources department, the economic development agency. It has SEIU 7-1, the AFSCME Joint Council, and the LA Orange County Building Trades and the Black Worker Center as part of the outreach team. And so I commend you guys, because I think one aspect of this that I think is also important is not just that it's meeting the industry demand and moving the job quality, but this really is a mechanism on taking a lot of this stuff regionally and by sector to scale. And the example that you've shown today is exactly one of those. There's a lot to be learned for future investments in other public localities and stuff. So thanks.
Thank you. Well said, John. Larry Frank.
So I just wanted to say that there's a huge amount of potential working in the public sector. It actually has some very big challenges that are being worked out by the public sector training programs, because most of them are civil service. So you have to create, pre-civil service classifications, which means that you actually have to get, the rule makers and the personnel, departments, commissions involved. But when you figure those pieces out, it is the way to do local hiring in the public sector in the same way that project labor agreements and local hire agreements, and community workforce agreements can do in the construction sector. But I think there's real room for powerful, training programs, public sector, statewide. And so it's a lot of work, but whenever there's a good job, it's a complex entry. And for us to actually think people are going to figure that out on their own, it just doesn't work that way. So the role of workforce development boards and our work is really well placed, trying to figure out the entry strategies into the utilities, into CARBs, contractors, et cetera. So it's really great work, but I just want to commend you guys for digging deep on it.
Great point, Larry. Carol Zabin.
Second everything that was said, and I had a question, which is the interagency work that maybe Aida you were alluding to. I know Shreyas Jakhtar has been kind of carrying that with a one-person shop, and I wondered if you guys were successful in the budget to expand his staff, because I think that's so important to get these agencies that really do invest the big money in climate stuff to understand better how to do labor standards and job access. So that was a question.
Thanks, Carol. Yes, we're in the process of interviewing folks to build that
How many positions are there altogether?
150.
Right.
No, just kidding. We're going to add I think 2 or 3 more as fast as we possibly can, with the potential expanding more. But I probably shouldn't get ahead of Pradeep because it's his team we're talking about.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Maybe he can bring that up when he does his report out. Yeah. Thanks, Carol.
And in the
Thanks for
meantime, we're
bringing that
looking for ways to connect some of the field team has some knowledge and understanding in some of those industries to support. So we work a lot with Shreyas. He's definitely would love to duplicate him multiple times.
Thank you, everyone. We're now going to move to our program implementation team updates with Joelle Hurst, Deputy Director for Program Implementation.
Great, thank you. Tim went over the draft calendar for putting our 21-22 budget funds out this coming year. So I just have a few brief updates on the current work. And just to clarify, that calendar is not posted yet, but it will be soon. There were over a dozen direct allocations or pass-throughs identified in our budget. And so we've been meeting with those entities to understand their programs and bring them into the CWDB portfolio, making connections with other initiatives and developing relationships as we begin the work to put their contract packages together. Both the Prison to Employment and the Breaking Barriers programs are coming to a close. And as they do, we'll be collecting and analyzing the final data for evaluation and reporting. Both have been successful, even navigating and adjusting through COVID. And so we are very pleased to see that they were refunded in the 21-22 budget. Accelerator 7 has ended with closeout activities taking place. 8.0 technically ends in September, but with COVID, we processed time-only extensions for all but 5 through March of 2022. 9.0 was awarded earlier this year, and those projects are getting underway. And 10.0, which we'll release in the fall, will mirror 9.0 in that it will also be focused on equitable recovery through high road principles through high road principles. There were over 30 California Climate Initiative HRTPs and HRCCs that were funded. Those are all now underway. I think Aida mentioned some started in March and some in June. So they've all been under contract and onboarded and now are actually working. So we will start to see some data coming in on those in the next months. We also have 5 high road projects that were funded by the Department of Education on a similar timeline. So we have all those going as well. While we're working on building capacity to do this work, staffing capacity to do this work, we're also developing a Salesforce program platform for grant management, which includes application, contracting, reporting, and data capture. So we're currently working on the Accelerator 10 application. And so that will be the first one that folks will use to apply through Salesforce for Accelerator 10. And we're also developing a Salesforce platform for the general fund high road training partnerships that will start in January. And that is it.
Thank you, Joelle, for that great update. We'll now shift to our next update. Pradeep Kodamraju, Deputy Director for Research Policy and Legislation. Pradeep. Pradeep, you're on mute.
I'll start with the staffing question that was raised just now. We are in the process of building a brand new unit called State Partnerships, and within that unit is one position, maybe two, assigned to looking specifically at climate work that Shreyas is now the sole individual doing that, and we are looking at that, and he's been working diligently on many fronts in trying to build that collaboration with the climate related agencies and other partners. In addition to that, that state partnership unit is going to look at building the relationship with state local workforce boards, as well as with the regional partnership units. And then we're looking at an additional position that looks at all of the different partnership with other agencies like CDSS, DOR, others, community colleges, to work with building the relationships, both in terms of the federal policy, WIOA, but also in terms of, as you heard, many of the state funded projects coming are going to come online, and working with them in a collaborative way to try and build those relationships, because ultimately we just talked about public sector employment. Not only are we looking for their expertise, but eventually maybe even having individuals with workforce development knowledge within those agencies. So I think there'll be more to come, and I know Tim will be updating staffing throughout the rest of the year as we progress in future meetings. Let me quickly go through, I'll just get high points. First, in terms of policy, just to remind the board that all local boards were recertified and designated, and including one that was conditional at the last board meeting. So all of them have been have received recertification and redesignation from July 1 of this year to June 30th, 2023. We are working on the WIOA annual report that is due to the Department of Labor at the end of November. There have been directives that have been fully implemented. One of them has been extended. The deadline has been extended to November. Legislative, where the legislature was in recess, they're back now. Staff is still actively tracking active bills with potential impact to the workforce board. With regard to research and evaluation, we're sort of working on this in several fronts. We are working with our third-party evaluators to be the conduit for those evaluators who receive the information. And then for example, the AJCC evaluation, which is to be completed by next March. They have received the quantitative data, and they're working on that. And we are now looking at interviewing a sample of the AJCCs, and we've developed the criteria and coming close to making that decision of who gets to be interviewed. It's going to be partially face-to-face, but some of them will be virtual, keeping in mind the current conditions. the AB 1111 and P2E evaluation is just getting off the third-party evaluation, just getting off. The external evaluators are UC Riverside and the Corporation for Skills Workforce, and we'll update you in future board meetings on that. The other area that we're working on is internally, as the board knows, that we have a whole staff of researchers that are looking at coming up with evaluation criteria framework for focusing on high road, but having general applicability to all of our other grants. And the long-term, not very long, but long-term intention there is to build a collective impact of all of our programs using a common evaluation framework. And we've just started that work, and we are going to use some of the existing granting that is out there as case studies to test that out as we move forward. Aida mentioned earlier about the partnership with the Utilities Commission and the work of Shreyas. The CWDB helped develop a recently adopted new requirement by the California Public Utilities Commission to address job quality, job access, and high road workforce development in CPUC's investments in electrical vehicle charging station development. And more broadly, that is happening in the climate arena, thanks to Shreyas' work in developing in including work for high road workforce development concepts within their strategic plans and policy initiatives. One highlight today is starting the development MOU with the California Energy Commission, and essentially the interest from commissioners, executives, and program managers at CEC. The last thing I would talk about this, I could have talked about this in the research section too, but I put this on the data management and administration because California is really in a unique position to talk about the CalSkills program. It is probably, I think, maybe the only, but one of handful, if at all, in having this whole data management or like a data system from which we can do analysis. Through that, we are developing legislative reports and dashboard reports, and we're coming close to completion with all that work. It essentially involves all of our WIO partners and more, and looking at data and answering the basic question: do our training programs are effective? And specifically looking at weight changes pre and post training. And I think in a future board meeting we will be talking specifically about the CalSkills report. We have contracted with the California Policy Lab, and they're just about to complete an impact analysis on using that CalSkills data. And what we are trying to do now is move the CalSkills program from the 20th century to the 21st century. And we're trying to move that data management into the cloud. We're trying to make more uniform the partnership agreements, and then to complete the circle, as we have these new programs that are coming online and new funding, we need to build a more broader data infrastructure and management to house all of that data that is being collected and will be collected in the future. So I'll stop there, Tim, if there are any questions.
Thank you, Pradeep. We do have a question from John Brower.
Pradeep, the states also put a lot of money into the Cradle to Career database. At some point, is the expectation that there's an intersection and an integration between these two data systems?
Yes, that is the expectation. And I had a conversation when I first started with Kathy Booth, who's leading from Wested, who's leading the Cradle to Career effort. And the initial intent, I mean, last year they spent basically trying to iron out what I would call the mechanics of the Cradle to Career, the legislation, all the sort of technical and policy requirements. This year, they're focusing first primarily on education data, education, both secondary and post-secondary. Down the road, yes, they will be looking at workforce development in general. The issue still remains is whether it's including Cal skills, but more likely having an interface with Cal skills from the Cradle to Career system.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Pradeep. And Clemente, do we have any public comments related to any of these updates? Or Tim?
Give Clemente another second. He may be checking.
No public comments at this time.
Perfect. Okay, we'll now proceed to our local workforce board update. This is a standing item on our agenda for local workforce development boards to provide reports. The topic is their local board roles, work regarding economic recovery, quality jobs, and equity. As all of you know, we have 45 local boards overall, and they're our critical front line in fighting for economic and social equity, as well as our overall high road recovery. Today, we have the pleasure of hearing from Dave Taney, Executive Director of the Mother Lode Workforce Development Board and Central Sierra Economic Development District. Dave?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Farouk. I appreciate you pronouncing my name correctly too. That was very impressive. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today, and thanks, Tim, for the invitation. Let me share my screen, if I might, just for a second. Is that allowable here? I'm going to, let's see. Okay, I'm going to try this. Okay, sharing screen. Okay, is it working?
Yeah. Almost. Yeah, don't see it yet, Dave.
Nobody, you can't see it?
Wait, there it is.
All right. Okay. So we got the hamsters going at full speed here, and you can hopefully see what I'm showing. Just to familiarize you with where we are, we're the Mother Lode Consortium. We are a joint power authority of 4 counties in the Middle Sierra, and we're called the Mother Lode because this is where gold was discovered way back when. We cover 5,300 square miles and perform all of our services. So I'm sure you've had other workforce areas, local areas talk to you about their, what they do. And we are a rural, kind of modestly funded workforce area. And so you'll see how we perform our services given those constraints. And so we don't farm out our service delivery. We do all the adult dislocated worker and youth services ourselves. We perform those ourselves. We have an AJCC in each of our 4 counties, 1 comprehensive and 3 affiliates. And it's about a 2.5-hour drive from the northernmost AJCC to the southern one. We do all this with a staff of about 21 people. So about 15 are dedicated to program delivery. And we have another 6 or 7 that serve the board and do fiscal and HR and everything else. We wear multiple hats. We have it set up because we have such a limited staff. We don't have a business services team per se, but we hire people that can work with both demand and supply side clients. And we all just are comfortable working with both businesses and job seekers. So We have kind of a flat growth. We're not growing like the rest of the state. We have an aging population, have about 60,000 in the workforce, and we serve 3,000 workers a year with basic career services, which if you look at the unemployment rate of about 5%, we're basically serving every unemployed person in our region. And we enroll about 300 in our intensive services. We have about 7,500 businesses, 98% of which are small, less than 50. And I believe that 90% or so are less than 20 people. So we have to find really economies of scale to reach a large volume of businesses with a very minimal staff. So our key industries are not different than most local areas: healthcare, construction, manufacturing. But we also, this maybe what sets us apart is tourism and hospitality. We're a destination area. We have Yosemite National Park, several state parks, ski resorts, casinos, wineries. So we have, I don't know how many of you come up to the Central Sierra for your vacations, but we encourage you to come up here and leave your money. And then we also have natural resources. So we have forests and watersheds and mineral mines. And so that's really where we focus a lot of our attention. Again, by way of introduction, we are also one of 15 regional planning units. And so we're one of, I don't know how many single workforce area RPUs, but we have 4 counties. So it's not, there's complexity that some of the other RPUs have of dealing with multiple county entities. But for us, we're sufficiently different from the San Joaquin region. So we stand apart because we have a different profile for industry and the like. So we're one of the 15 regions as well. So we do apply for regional grants and do regional projects. Okay, so here's what I was asked to talk about today. We have some examples for economic recovery, quality jobs, and equity. So because we don't have a business services team dedicated, I don't have enough money to staff that. What we do is we try to partner with chambers of commerce and business entities. So in 3 of our 4 AJCCs, we're co-located with the county chamber of commerce, and not just in the same building, but in the same oxygen space. And so that gives us the ability to optimize our demand side partner collaboration. So we can be intimately familiar with the voice of business by listening through a single mouthpiece through the Chamber of Commerce, but we can also use the chamber to get our word out and drive awareness in the business community. And they also attract businesses. So we have businesses coming in our door all the time for chamber events, but while they're here, we talk about our services. So it's the way we got creative to reach out to business without having to dedicate a whole team of business services people. We're also the administrator for the regional economic development district. This is an EDA district, the Economic Development Administration District. The opportunity came up for they had an opening for an administrator. We applied for it and got it. So again, it gives us a chance to stay really closely connected with the economic development leads in our various counties. Happens to be the same regional boundaries as our workforce development regions. So we're already in those counties. We're already operating. And so we took on the role of the administrator for the Economic Development District. And so we right now have a couple of things we're doing to help with recovery, and through Central Sierra Economic Development District, in addition to the chambers, we just completed a biomass feasibility study and business plan. So we have a lot of woody biomass up here, a lot of forests, a lot of trees. A lot of them are burning right now, unfortunately, but there are business models around the use of biomass. Instead of just the cost, if you look at expense of cleaning up the forest, that's a bottom line expense. But if you look at the possibility of using that biomass in a business, we have businesses up here that are producing biochar biofuels, hydrogen fuels. They're producing firewood and lumber and various other wood products. So we just produced under a grant from the USDA. It's a Rural Business Development Grant, and going to generate at least 25 new jobs from that. But that's just for a single business model. But we have about a dozen businesses that we're working with up here to for them to invest in their biomass plans up here. We also are developing, as the Central Sierra Economic Development District, a comprehensive economic development strategy, a CEDS, for the region. And that's an EDA grant. And so that's got a strong workforce development component. So the biggest enabler for economic development is workforce development. And so that CEDS is going to have a strong workforce development component and an engine that drives all the different components of it. On the quality jobs front, we have a couple of industry initiatives going on in the construction industry. In the construction industry, we have an MC3 pre-apprentice cohort. We're up to our 8th cohort now. We work with the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission is the #1 sort of driver behind that. And the reason they're active with us up here is we have the Hetch Hetchy Reservoir, which produces the water and electricity for city and county of San Francisco. And so they come up here and they invest in some of these programs, and we partner with the construction unions and labor unions, the Conservation Corps, Adult Ed, and of course our Workforce Development Board. And we've produced several cohorts. The most recent one leveraged P2E. We had several justice involved individuals, women, and so it's really serving, you could put this under the equity bucket as well, serving a lot of underserved people through this collaborative. On healthcare, we are in the process of we have a partnership between our local hospital, primarily Adventist Health, Sonora, and with our K through 12 superintendent of schools and the local community colleges and our workforce board to actually conduct a certified nursing assistant certification program in the high schools, so that when these youth get their degree, they've earned a certificate, they are onboarded right, the next day they are onboarded right into the hospital and who hires them. And we have a problem up here with youth that get out of school without direction and without a pipeline, kind of scattering to the wind. And that's one of the reasons we're trying to catch them before they leave. And so this has been a pretty successful program thus far. So I'm excited about this CNA funding that Mr. Rainey was talking about a little while ago, because we already have a program that could make use of that funding. On the equity side, since we are a region, we apply for the regional plan implementation grants. And the most recent one, the RPI-4 grant, since you all are familiar, you all are accustomed to acronyms, we have our 5-letter acronym here: Regional Equity, Access, Collaboration, High Road, Reach System Project. So what we're doing is we found that we have a really broad geography to cover, and we can do that best through digital access. And so instead of everything, all intake going through one of our career counselors, we're setting up a system, a front end to our programs, so that someone can self-navigate online, put in just a handful of questions about themselves, what sort of qualifications they might have for our programs. And then based on that, we'll have a rules engine that will direct them to programs of ours that they might be eligible for, but also programs for our partners that they might be eligible for. And so we're working in conjunction with Unite Us. I don't know how many of you are familiar with them, but it's a partner referral program that's sponsored primarily through the healthcare industry. But they're doing a special project with us on this RPI-4 grant to bring some of the data from the the partner referral program and bring it forward to the actual clients that might make use of it, to create kind of like a 2-1-1 type front end, so that we can help direct people to the right projects. So that's our RPI4 grant. Last but not least is our P2E state prison pilot. This is Equity for Justice involved individuals. We're a small workforce area, but we're known as the small but mighty motherlode. So we like to be nimble and innovative in the projects that we do. And so when we received this state prison pilot, I'm going to show you, next slide is this is the actual workflow that we submitted with our grant application. So instead of just waiting until someone's in the wind and been released from prison and then try to intake them after the fact down here in the post-release AGCC world, we proposed a model where we would develop some videos that would talk about the AJC system and show them to the captive audience in prison. So by the time they're released, they already know that this is a place that they can go to get help. And then we also have developed a version of CalJobs that will run inside the prison. We've worked with Geographic Solutions, which is the software vendor, to create one that meets prison security standards, so that we send our case manager into prison and with this version of CalJobs, and we do case management inside the prison. And we found that this really allows us to tee things up so that when they're released down here in the yellow section, we work closely with parole, with DAPO, which is the Division of Adult Parole Operations. And so we are actively working with DAPO right now to share the CalJobs case file data with the parole officer, so that the parole officer will have a pre-populated case file themselves. I heard you talking a little bit about data sharing. So we have an active participation from DAPO right now. They're building a new case management system, and they're aligning it with CalJobs so that we can hand off key information to them. Then they can usher that parolee into the post-release AJCC, that career plan for that person that's going into the post-release local area will already have been started pre-release in the prison. You're not released in the same area where you're served in the first place. So this will be a CalJobs underpinning that will continue all the way to the post-release AJCC, where they'll be much more likely to get a job, and the parole office themselves will facilitate that warm handoff to the local workforce area. So we're working. So this is a statewide proof of concept. We have two state prisons in our area, Mule Creek and Sierra Conservation Center, about 8,000 inmates. So we're doing a proof of concept, and when this is successful, the idea is that this will be adopted statewide, and this warm handoff, this continuum of service, we feel is going to increase the likelihood that these people will not be blown in the wind and will actually stay on course for getting a job post-release. So ultimately the goal is to reduce recidivism via employment. So we're excited about this second round of funding, and when adopted statewide, there'll need to be money to fund CalJobs and case management pre-release in the prisons. So the last slide is just an example of a summit meeting we had here a couple weeks ago. The two people on the left are from DAPO, and they're here to align their case management system with ours. The fellow that I have my arm around is Joseph Piazza, and he's with the CDCR, and he runs the career technical education program statewide in all the state prisons. So he's attaching his CTE program to our continuum of service and pre-release case management model, so that he can have a higher likelihood of his CTE graduates being successful once they're released. And then a lot of the rest of these people are your own staff. That's Joe Flores right in front, and they came to visit us. The state board staff came to visit us a couple weeks ago. So I guess in summary, I'd say Mother Lode we're small, but we're nimble and we're innovative, and we enjoy the reputation and the role of being sort of a petri dish for the rest of the state, because we can do things, because we're nimble, because we don't have a lot of bureaucracy and siloed organizations. We can get things done and kind of test things out for best practices statewide. Okay, how'd I do? 10 minutes?
Thanks,
Was
Dave.
it longer? All right, thanks, Tim.
I lost track.
All right.
Good job.
Thank you so much, David. We really appreciate not just this report, but really want to commend all of your team back in the Mother Lode region. And it's a great opportunity for us not just to see what's happening on the ground, but to learn about the great diversity of different regions in our state. So thank you so much, David. We are now going to shift to our next agenda item, which is a presentation. We know that with the size of our baby boomer population transitioning towards retirement, California's over 60 population is actually projected to diversify and grow faster than any other age group. By 2030, 10.8 million Californians will be an older adult, making up 1/4 of the state's overall population. In June 2019, Governor Gavin Newsom issued an executive order calling for the creation of a master plan for aging. After work began on the master plan, the pandemic reached California, and the virus has disproportionately harmed older and other at-risk adults. These challenges have huge implications for workforce, the healthcare industry, government, and families. And we have the pleasure of having Kim McCoy-Wade, Director of California's Department of Aging, to brief us on the master plan. And following Kim's presentation, we'll hear from Julia Figueroa McDonough, will present the Labor and Workforce Development Agency's Direct Care Workforce Primer. So please help me welcome Kim McCoy-Wade.
Hi there. Actually, Kim is not able to join us for about another 20 minutes. So we're going to go ahead and have Julia go first, and then Kim can follow up.
Sure. Julia, are you ready?
Yes, just give me a moment to start sharing my screen.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Julia.
Sure, no problem. Okay, can you all see the screen and hear me?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, great. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Julia Figueroa McDonough. I'm currently an Open Society Foundation's Leadership and Government Fellow working with the Labor Agency on building better direct care jobs. So I'm going to give a somewhat shortened version of a presentation that we put together for some of our partners in HHS yesterday. So I apologize ahead of time if it seems a bit rushed, but I'd be happy to come back and talk at greater length about any of this at a future date. So I wanted to give a general background on the structure of the direct care workforce. Many of you may already be familiar with this, but I'll just go over it briefly. I think it is such a complex and large sector that I find it helpful to think about it in terms of a few different variables. The first being, who performs the labor, where that labor is performed, who pays for the labor, whether it be publicly funded or private pay, and who regulates those work spaces. So we know that in California, as with the whole country, the whole world, there's a huge unpaid labor force. And we are anticipating that by 2030, there'll be a shortage of family caregivers that amounts to 3.6 million. That is a huge issue unto itself, but this presentation is focused on paid direct care workers. We are also anticipating a shortage of anywhere between 600,000 to 3.2 million paid direct care workers in California by 2030. The low end of that is based on who's currently eligible for and receiving services, and the high end is based on who actually needs those services, regardless of whether or not they're receiving them or are eligible for government funded services. So we have three basic settings, right? The home setting, community setting, and congregate, which refers to group residential settings. In the home setting, we have IHSS, which is a very large program I'm sure many of you are familiar with. The blue here indicates public funding. So IHSS is publicly funded. Then we have private home care agencies, which are to a large extent regulated by Department of Social Services. There's a registry for that. And then we have a large and ever-growing gray market, which just refers to the people who are receiving the services or their family members directly contracting with the worker. And in most cases, not all, but most cases, that work is completely off the books. And then we have community-based services, which are regulated by, there are a bunch of different services that are, I know there's a lot of acronyms there, but they're really aimed at keeping people in their homes as they age, providing community support so that people can age in place. And those are regulated by a combination of different agencies, including Department of Aging and the Department of Public Health. And then we have in the Department of Healthcare Services. And then for our congregate care settings, we have skilled nursing facilities, which are the facilities which are usually larger, where people receive medical care in addition to assistance with activities of daily living. And then we have the residential care facilities for the elderly, which are not medical facilities, and run the gamut from the small 6-bed facilities to much larger facilities, the assisted living facilities. The skilled nursing facilities are primarily public funded, though there is some amount of private pay there. And the residential care facilities are overwhelmingly private pay with a small amount of government subsidy for people who receive an assisted living waiver. So, the other piece of this is that all of these settings are to some extent and programs, other than the gray market, regulated by HSS or one of the arms of HSS. It is also regulated by labor, right? Because all anything to do with wage and hour, health and safety in any work setting is regulated by labor. So that's another agency that's involved in regulating this industry. The job categories, I'll go through really quickly, but I just want to highlight that the vast majority of the people who perform this work fall into the category of a personal care aide, which is someone who helps with the activities of daily living. The state requires 5 hours of training for that work. Independent providers, who are the name for the people who provide care directly to IHSS eligible recipients, are basically a subset of personal care aides, and they're not required to have any official training other than an orientation. CNAs, we've mentioned a couple times already today, require additional training, 60 hours plus 100 hours of supervised training. And then home health aides perform pretty much the same tasks that CNAs do, but in a home setting, and they require 120 hours of training. This is a sector that is exploding, as I'm sure you're all aware, because of the demographic shift and the growth in the older adult population. So over the last 10 years, or from 2009 to 2019, excuse me, we've had a growth of over 519% in California for personal care and home health assistance. We have a population of over almost 600,000 who are on the books. I just want to emphasize that these numbers do not include the gray market, which is not confined to home health. There are many, many workers we know from our experience at the Labor Commissioner's Office, for example, who work off the books in residential settings as well. And in CNAs, we've actually had a decline, and that we surmise has a lot to do with the availability and accessibility of training and certification. So as was already mentioned, it's really great to hear about the additional funding going towards that end. Now, the demographics of the workforce are sort of broken down for you all here on this slide, but the best way to summarize it is that it's labor that is performed overwhelmingly by women of color. 77% of direct care workers in California are women of color. Half of them are immigrants. And in California, the API, the Asian American and African American population, is represented at 2 times their percentage of the population overall in this sector. So here we get to sort of the nitty-gritty, or the heart of the problem are the wages. There was zero growth in California in personal care and home health care aides wages in the decade between 2009 and 2019. There was some growth for nursing assistants that most likely had something to do with the supply and demand we saw in the earlier slide. But overall, for direct care workers, there was a decline of 6% in that decade. And I want to highlight that, as we all know, because of the work that you do, wages are not the entire picture of working conditions, right? This is incredibly difficult work. There are all sorts of issues. There's lack of control over scheduling. There's lack of full-time employment. There are basically no benefits. Very difficult to find a worker in the sector who receives benefits. And then this work can be physically quite difficult and challenging. And then there's an entire emotional level. It can be very emotionally grueling work, which sort of highlights why, in addition to the low wages, it is so difficult to fill these jobs. This is just a comparison of similarly, low paid, but still paid better than direct care work in California in 2019. Obviously, all these jobs have value, all this work has value, but short order cooks, housekeepers, and gardeners all earned more than a direct care worker, which tells you a lot about how we value this essential work. And this is another lens onto how we value this work. 44% of direct care workers in California are at less than 200% of the poverty level, and half of them earn so little that they have to receive public assistance of one kind or another, most of them more than one kind of public assistance. So, what would it look like if we were to raise the floor, if we were to ensure a living wage for direct care workers, which in California hovers above $18 an hour right now? There have been studies done in the last couple of years that have projected that if we were to raise the minimum wage for direct care workers in California in the next couple of years, by 2030, there would be an additional economic output of 3.6 million in California alone, public assistance savings of 165 million. There would be 50,000 direct care jobs filled, and annually, on a national level, $1.3 billion saved in turnover costs. Additionally, and more importantly, the impact of a living wage on quality of care is clear. And this is a point that we can't repeat enough, is that the quality of the job is the quality of the care. So again, these studies that have been done in the last couple of years have found that a living wage would produce a 9.1% increase in staffing, 17 to 21% increase in retention. And this is just actually not even for a living wage, but for a $1 increase in the hourly rate of pay. And these two issues are huge issues. We've known they've been issues forever in the care sector, but was sort of made clear in tragic proportions during COVID, right? That staffing and retention are directly correlated to quality of care. One of the recent studies that was done last year found that a 10% increase in wages would have resulted in a 3% decrease in COVID-related deaths in nursing homes over the last couple of years. So there are multiple initiatives across the country that are trying to get at this question of how do we improve care jobs so that we can improve care and meet the need to fill these jobs. In California, we've had the Master Plan on Aging, which had as one of its 4 main goals, Caregiving That Works, the Future of Work Commission, which had as one of its main goals, the elimination of working poverty, and within that highlighted the need to lift the floor in the care sector. And then the Future of the Healthcare Workforce Commission, which was convened a couple of years ago and included in its recommendations the creation of an additional job category, which would be a universal care worker. Other states, you may have heard about the move that they've been making on policy and legislative level. Washington expanded its public long-term care benefit through a modest payroll deduction. New Jersey last year, in the midst of COVID, passed several pieces of legislation, which included wage hikes of $3 for direct care workers who work in publicly funded settings. And Michigan is sort of spearheading a state level advisory team focused on professionalization of direct care work, which would include lifting wages and making training more accessible and cohesive. On the federal level, we are not where we hoped we would be when this administration first came on. The piece of the the American Jobs Act that was meant to be allocated to care was left on the chopping block, but there is a new bill, the Better Care, Better Jobs Act, that would allocate $100 million to states to increase the Medicaid reimbursement rate and tie that to better wages and training for people in the sector. There's the WISH Act, which I always forget the acronym, but it's meant to create and build a public-private partnership to make long-term care more accessible to more older adults. And then there's a modest amount of money through the budget reconciliation bill, which is still being reserved for home and community-based services. So there are, I guess, an infinite number of ways to think about trying to tackle the issue of how to make these better jobs so that we can fill the vacancies that are ever growing and also ensure that the care that is provided is quality care. The kind of core of the government funded care in California is the IHSS program, which employs over 520,000 employees. There are over the issue of who is the employer is nuanced for IHSS, but there are over 520,000 independent providers who provide care to eligible recipients in IHSS. There are over 100,000 employees, CNAs at skilled nursing facilities in California. So that's a big chunk. Perhaps where, strategically we could start thinking about how to sort of, exercise government levers in terms of funding and minimum standards for quality of care and quality of jobs. There are also, as was illustrated in the very first slide, the map of the industry. There are other Medicaid-funded home and community-based services that employ about 25,000 individuals. And then there's the whole private market. And the idea is sort of to, lift all boats by exerting pressure where the state has the power to do so, starting with the publicly funded programs. This is just a sort of another way of thinking about how we make impact at in those various parts of the sector. And I, again, would be happy to come back and talk another time when you all have more time about all the efforts that are being made in these different categories. But there is legislation throughout the country, as I referenced earlier. There's some legislation actually pending in California right now, that runs the gamut between, Medicaid reimbursement, wage pass-throughs, financial transparency requirements for entities that receive public funding. There are policy incentives, which include, some HRTP work, for example, in the skilled nursing industry. And there are public-private partnerships that include not just employers, private employers, but also private community-based organizations and funders that have to do with, high road pilot projects. And then obviously a lot of work being done in accessible career lattices, which all of you know a lot more about than I do. And then the broader question of stakeholder engagement, which, in California has taken the form of these recent commissions that I alluded to earlier. And now we're really more at the stage of implementation. And there are, various tools for that, including a direct care workforce solutions table, which is something that we are moving forward with slowly but surely under the leadership of Kim McCoy-Wade at the Department of Aging. And then lastly, but not least, is culture change, which, a lot of our partners in HSS have been doing really, groundbreaking work in this area, including Amanda, who's here on the call, who is spearheading the work of the master plan on aging, to kind of elevate the issue and the importance of equitable access to care and services for older Californians as a priority for the state. And there's also the issue, I think, of culture change internally within the state in terms of how, because there are, like, this sector is such a great example, right? There are so many different departments and agencies involved in these workplaces and and with this workforce, that it necessitates, I think a different level of partnership and a different level of collaboration. And I believe that is it. As I said again, I'm happy to talk more at length at a different time. If anyone has questions, I'm happy to answer them. And Abby Snay, who has been spearheading this work on behalf of the labor agency, is also here. So I'm sure she would be happy to take questions.
Thank you for that. Those great insights, Julia. Does anybody have any questions for her and her presentation? Okay. Oh, Senator Leyva.
Thank you very much, Angelo. Julia, thank you for that excellent report, if not somewhat disheartening. My hope is, I really do see this as something that the federal government and state government has to work on, because trying to get these direct care providers just up to $18 an hour, I mean, it's disgraceful to see what we're paying them right now, and they're taking care of our most important people. And, how do you ask someone to do this job and they're going to live in poverty themselves? So I really do see it as something that the state and the federal government needs to work on. I would say, this year, after a long, long battle, we finally were able to increase rates for childcare workers. And I kind of see this as our next frontier, right? The old saying we're all familiar with, you judge a society by how they treat their youngest and their oldest. I think sometimes we get an F. And so hopefully we're moving in the right direction with childcare. Now I think we really need to redouble our efforts when it comes to caring for our aging and our population, our disabled folks. So thank you for the work you're doing. Count on me to be helpful in any way with legislation in California, but we've got to find a way. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Great comment, Senator Leyva. Bob Redlow.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. It was really good. I've heard so many, when you're around as long as some of us have been, Tim and I, you remember the arguments around farm workers, such a needed group, but the employers coming across and saying, well, we can't pay our farm workers any more money because then we'd have to raise our prices of food at the supermarkets. And this just doesn't hold water, just like the minimum wage doesn't hold water. There are reports and reports about this over and over. So there's no question about the need to raise the wages of direct care workers. But the issue here, as in healthcare, it doesn't just center on the wages of certified nurse assistants or direct care. It centers in the delivery of healthcare. And if you look at Kaiser's model, and maybe you've seen this, Kaiser doesn't use many certified nurse assistants, but they have a number of patient care technicians, and they've integrated those technicians into their team care approach. Well, why can't our long-term care facilities and our SNFs have a better delivery of care that addresses quality of health? And why can't CNAs be part of a team supervised? We have so many long-term care facilities that don't even have RN supervising CNAs. They have LVN supervising, and that's just plain wrong. So we really need to look at the delivery of what these folks do, raise their skill level so that it's appropriate with their wage, and then have a better health outcome. That's the answer to how to increase the wage of these folks and how to have better healthcare delivery.
Yeah, and I hear what you're saying, and I agree. And I think it's definitely one of the pieces, and it's something that I think is I don't know if you're familiar with the universal care worker proposal, but that's the idea of sort of integration into a team is integral to that proposal, and the ability to do so in different settings. And that I'm forgetting, one of you might know, but what used to be known as the California Long-Term Care Education Center now has a different name. It's SEIU 2015's training outfit in Los Angeles. They train, IHSS providers and CNAs throughout the state. But they did a study a couple of years ago measuring the impact of integrating the frontline direct care workers into the treatment team or the medical team. and found, not surprisingly, they sort of documented what we already knew, right, which is positive, not just the positive health benefits, but also the cost savings of that, because it resulted in fewer emergency room visits, fewer hospitalizations.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Julia. This is such important work, and we really appreciate you spotlighting this. I see now that Kim McCoy-Wade is available to join us. Kim, are you ready to share your part of the presentation?
Well, I absolutely am. And I'm delighted to be following Julia and Labor Agency highlighting one important part of the Master Plan for Aging employment themes. If it makes sense, I'll go ahead with my presentation. Thanks to my team here. We're going to lift up 3 themes, one of which we've delved into, direct care, but then really have time for discussion. So first of all, I won't assume that everyone knows what the Master Plan for Aging is. I will give you a quick intro to that. Go back for 1 second. We'll talk about the 3 ways that the Master Plan connects with workforce. Then we'll kind of get specific about partnership opportunities that are already underway and how we can build on them. So I didn't say it, I'm Kim McCoy-Wade, Director of the Department of Aging and convener with Secretary Galley and the Governor of the Master Plan for Aging effort. So next slide. I don't know if you can remember June 2019, but back before COVID, the governor issued an executive order that really recognized that aging is changing everything in California. And in order to address that, we needed to convene the entire cabinet, full cabinet work group, stakeholder committee, research committee, and a special focus on long-term care to make a 10-year plan for the state. And here's why. Some key facts that you all probably well know. Next slide. A quarter of all population will be 60 and over. There's no magic age when you're older, but in employment, sometimes we use 55, but 60 and over would be a quarter. And if you look at, I think one of the most important facts for me is the bar chart to your left of the 2010, 2030, 2060. The dark blue to the left is the under 18 and the orange is the 60 plus. And for the first time ever in California, the 60 plus bar is going to cross the under 18. Now, let me be very clear. This is not to say children versus younger people versus older people. The exact opposite. This is to think about, what does that mean for your family? What does that mean for your housing? What does that mean for your employment? What does that mean for your income needs, your community, your transportation? At every level, we're going to look different. We are looking different. There's more people living longer. And next slide will show diversifying. Older adults remain majority white, but that is quickly changing in California as more of us are living longer, and California's diversity, which is its great strength and power, is coming into the older ages. And that has also big implications, both in terms of making sure that we are providing services and activities and opportunities that are culturally competent and linguistically accessible. But it also means that people will have experienced the lifetime of discrimination that may happen around race, around gender, around LGBTQ, and are entering their older years carrying that legacy in earnings, in assets, in opportunity. And how do we remedy that? How do we mitigate that in the older years? It's never too late. Okay, so with that data-driven equity focus, we convened as many different voices as we could. Yes, we took a pause during COVID, but we continued. We had a stakeholder advisory committee of about 40 people. We had, who at the end of the day submitted over 800 recommendations to the administration for what to do. We had about a dozen roundtables with community legislators, again, beginning in person, but then going remote. We were so fortunate to work with Maria Shriver and the governor's task force on Alzheimer's disease prevention and preparedness, one of the largest issues impacting aging and challenging our bonus years. As I mentioned, we had a full cabinet work group. I have to confess, we started with the majority, but not all. But as we moved on, everybody came to the table. Corrections came to the table. Food and agriculture came to the table. Aging affects all of those sectors. And of course, COVID put in bold font where we have gaps, particularly in help for people living at home with the homes we choose as we age. How can we stay in our homes? How can we get the care we want, as Julia's presentation addressed? And for many of us, how can we keep working? Next slide. So we did it. The master plan was released January 2021. It had 5 bold goals for the next 10 years, and we're really pleased that it is already making a difference on budget and bill priorities. Next slide. There's 5 bold goals, and 3 of them explicitly have an employment component. First, no surprise in California, housing for all ages and stages. Many of us want more choices in remaining in our single family home or a nursing home. And there are a lot of choices in between, and we can do more. And we need to also help renters. Again, more elders are going to be renters, not benefiting from Prop 13. How do we help renters? And then connecting over to goal 2, health becomes really important as you age. If it wasn't in your younger years, it becomes more and more important. And including things that help you stay at home. So maybe it's modifying your home so that you don't fall. Maybe it is a home care worker providing some personal care, as we heard from Julia. But reimagining health, particularly in Medicare, the missing middle class does not have access, by and large, to any insurance that pays for healthcare, that kind of home care. Medicaid has some, Medicare does not. It's a huge squeeze on our missing middle class to not have healthcare support currently. So in goal 3, 4, and 5 is where workforce weaves in. So goal 3 is inclusion and equity. As we age, we do not want to be pushed aside. We want to be included, and isolation needs to be avoided. And one of the ways that people are included as we age is we continue to work, perhaps in new and different ways. Those of us in state service are familiar with the retired annuitant model. There's other professions that have created kind of counselors or different ways that older adults can continue to work for, and serve for that all-important purpose and connection. Goal 4, caregiving that works. I'm trusting that Julia handled it expertly since I've worked so closely. I know she did. And goal 5 is affording aging, and this gets to the monetary part of work. If you're living longer, how are you paying for it? We heard from our UC Berkeley Labor Center colleagues the context of downward mobility as you age. If you've been experiencing upward mobility, and what has happened to the combination of Social Security, pensions, and private savings that used to power retirement as we live longer, and each of those has been weakened in some way, and housing and healthcare costs are eating away on the other side. Particularly a problem for folks who weren't able to pay into Social Security, people who took breaks from the workforce, people who work in the gig economy, et cetera, et cetera. How are people affording aging? So goal 3, goal 4, goal 5 all have a work component. I want to take a second to go a little deeper on those 2 in a second, but next slide. Just want to lift up, those of you who are on this board know for sure, this is not the first master plan I'm sure you've seen, or strategic plan that has bold goals and vision. And we were told right from the start from our stakeholders, don't do another plan that sits on the shelf. So we added 3 components to our plan to try to ensure that. One is we gave ourselves homework for the first 2 years. The cabinet signed off on over 132 strategies of things they would do. I should say initiatives, tasks. So we are 6 months, I guess it's August now, 8 months into doing our homework. And here are some samples, and it says next to it, who said they would do it? C8, Health and Human Services, Department of Education. And again, they're not, some of them are explore and investigate, but we have these specific initiatives. So that's part of what we're working on. And we just issued our first 6-month progress report on the status of those initiatives. Next slide. We also, with the help of Department of Public Health, I should say the leadership of the Department of Public Health and West Health Foundation, built a data dashboard for aging that's public, that is the way we're going to hold ourselves accountable. It has a whole lot of demographic data about California, and again, by different demographic groups and geographies, but also our strategies and our goals. Are we achieving them? And it's right now, it's highlighting a lot of places we have data gaps or we need more data specificity, but we fully intend to hold ourselves accountable for continuous improvement to hit our goals. And then the third component of really making the master plan one of action is, as you all know, the actions at the local level. The local boards are really who do the work and who power the work. And the same is true throughout California. We're a state of regions. We're a state of regional and county and local leadership. And so building a local playbook that encouraged and supported local master plans for aging is one of our top priorities. When we began the process, we were very lucky that Los Angeles, San Diego, and San Francisco already had done comprehensive plans for how aging was changing their communities. We now want every community to do one in one shape or another that works for them. And of course, we have many cities in California that are part of AARP age-friendly cities. California just became the 8th state in the country to pursue age-friendly certification by AARP. So this is a place where local leadership, as I know the board agrees, is absolutely, local leadership and tailoring to local communities is absolutely key. Okay, so that's the master plan in a nutshell. As I mentioned, I'm going to talk more about these 3 intersections, but I'll only do 2 since Julie did the first. So opportunities to work. How can we create, we know that work is very, very important to purpose, to meaning, and that the old story of work, and this is where you all will tell me, you're the experts here. You come in, you start in this one place on the ladder, and then you climb up to the top, and then you retire. That story is no longer true for so many of us. We might be in and out of the market. We might come up and take a higher responsibility job, and then we may want to have a part-time job or a short-term job, or be able to leverage our expertise and our insight, but not have the same need for a full-time job. I think, and again, with the COVID breakthroughs in telework, there may be even more opportunities on this front. So what do we do to make that easy? How does that work so it doesn't interfere with Social Security and pensions? How does that work so it doesn't cause inadvertent economic consequences? So it's easy to operationalize from an HR perspective and allows for a diverse workforce of multi-generational leadership. That is something we'd really like to see more concrete examples of professions and sectors finding ways to continue to use older workers. Next slide. Specific efforts in this area. Again, I mentioned developing flexible work models, perhaps based on the retired annuitant model, is Initiative 84. 85 is working with you all on your state workforce plan. 86 is about expanding technology devices so that we can make sure any accessibility needs as you age or acquire disability are not barriers to work. And we also want to do reentry services for older adults coming out of the correctional system to make sure that that is not a barrier to work for folks. And we're really pleased that some work we've done with the governor's leadership with many of you is taking a look at any state requirements in employment or contractors around prior records and making sure those aren't barriers to older adults coming into the state service or state contracting. I'm going to skip over direct care, not because it's not incredibly important, but because it's so important, we've our dedicated time to it. We can talk about it more. But then again, this issue around the economic meaning of jobs and how is work part of the picture, how you afford aging. We have a tremendous equity gap as you age along racial lines and along gender lines and along immigration status lines, and reckoning with what it means to be able to have elder economic sufficiency. This was a measure developed by Steve Wallace at UCLA, who quite tragically and suddenly passed away earlier this year, but his work continues to live on in the master plan. And really it's the insight: income, healthcare, and housing. Those are the big 3 as you age. And how do we have enough income and enough management over housing and health? And so we need to put work in the mix. Next slide. We're very lucky in California that we have the only state EITC in the country that applies to older workers. So great job, California, already, and leading the way on that. And here are some of the initiatives that we worked with Julie Sue and Stuart Knox at the agency level on to include aging and disabled and caregiving work in the state planning for affordability. We do think it's time to look at Social Security, see which workers are left out and which work is left out. That is obviously a federal issue, but we know who's left out and we know why they've been left out. And part of addressing discrimination and racism in our country and sexism is addressing those Social Security gaps. We also want to look at bringing pension data into a data dashboard for aging. Again, promote the Cal EITC. I think last time I looked, we're about 1% of the Cal EITC participation in both numbers and dollars. But when the governor does things like provide a Golden State stimulus through EITC filers, that benefits older adults as well. So we're very pleased to see that happen. Next slide. So those are some very big picture options. I can't wait to discuss with you more about what catches fire for you, where you see opportunity. Just concretely, I want to finish by talking about ways our department is working. I want to just thank the board for committing to partnership and to Sherry Mung for her attention and strategy around partnerships. So we began our partnership agreement in 2019, carried through COVID, and are working to make sure older adults are fully included in the state plan policy objectives that, again, in your world are 55 plus, which is terrific. Next slide. I think we want to look with you all about, could the state plan modification going into 22 explicitly talk about older workers and intergenerational workforces, and really look at issues around age discrimination, which we hear from our colleagues at FAIR Employment and Housing is one of the top claims for discrimination in employment is around age, digital divide, and how we train people for new jobs, new skills, new locations, and then again, include people managing disability or health condition or family caregiving responsibilities. How do we really have a workplace that works for what aging looks like? And then again, continuing to partner on here at this table. We're very excited about a potential new direct care workforce solutions work. We're happening internally now between our two agencies and hopefully facing our stakeholders very soon. And then again, any way we can weave into training as more and more older people will need to keep working, want to keep working, and need new ways to do it. So with that, next slide, and I think it's thank you. And we can take the slides down and really open it up to the, if you haven't already, here's our team, myself, our brand new Deputy Director, Sutep Lahanovic, who comes to us most recently working with IHSS Workforce in San Mateo, but has a real background in workforce, and Alicia Black, of course, our Senior Employment Program Leader Extraordinaire at CDA. So we're all available to work with you anytime. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kim. This is really important, critical work, and it's a pleasure for our respective agencies to collaborate together. We'll begin with Gloria Young, please.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. First of all, I didn't get a chance to speak when Julia was speaking. And one of the things that I am aware of is that the American Psychological Association has indicated that caregivers are really in desperate situations, and that most of them that are taking care of others end up having mental health issues themselves. So my question is, how are we not only going to look at the income, the wages, but also how do we provide insurance and how do we provide support services for them? And then my second issue or question was around, and you shared about the fact that aging adults are dealing with the fact that they don't have the kinds of services they need in Medicare, including long-term care. If you have Medi-Cal, you can get those kinds of services, but if you have Medicare and you don't have long-term care as a separate insurance, then you're stuck in this horrible hole where there's no opportunities for you. And so what ends up happening is that family members end up being responsible for continuing to take care of their loved ones without the resources, without the pay, without the opportunity for long-term care, and dealing with all kinds of medical crisis issues such as Alzheimer's, dementia. And so how are we addressing those issues as well? Thank you.
Thank you so much you're absolutely right. The number one provider of care is the unpaid family caregiver. That is how our system is, a system of adult care is built on the backs of family. Some who are paid as IHSS workers, but that is the minority. The majority, and it has profound implications for two generations of affording living and work. And increasingly you see that middle generation missing work, taking a break from work, spending down their retirement, spending down their savings to take care of their mom or their grandma. And so then you end up with that generation not as well situated for their own retirement because they have had to spend it down to care for the person ahead of them. So it is a profound equity issue that is going to have legacy impacts. We're really pleased with some of the We just, in Medicaid this year, the state agreed to eliminate the asset test, the governor and legislature, so that will help sort of prevent some spending down pressures that there are. But honestly, it's a much bigger rethinking of work-family balance and what it means when, and I always give credit to the child care. I do feel like the work around young children is a little bit further ahead in terms of parental leave and family leave and sick, and we need to be thinking about the family multi-generationally. You've got people on all sides. And I would say many older adults will say, another issue is sometimes I say family in air quotes, is family of choice. And sometimes our law and policy is slow to recognize that your family caregiver may not be your child. You may not have children. You may be estranged from your children. Your children may be 3,000 miles away. And can you designate that family caregiver who then can take sick leave, who can then take paid leave, who can then take even bereavement leave, dare I say, because they are family. And so there's a lot to do when you put that. We always say, we're not trying to make everyone champions necessarily of working on aging or disability, but we want you to have that aging lens over everything you do. So if you're thinking about family leave or family caregiving, think about the care for the newborn, about the adopted child, all of that, but also think about the 60-year-old who takes a fall, or the 80-year-old who's getting more severe dementia and needs to be placed into a different setting. Do our work-family policies incorporate all of our families at all of our ages and stages?
Thank you, Kim. One of the things that I was thinking about as well, and it affected me several years ago when I was working in an organization and I had several employees that were caught in the middle, as you mentioned, taking care of their young ones and taking care of their adults. There are so many services that are available for childcare, whether it's governmental agencies providing benefits, time off, all of those kinds of things that are not the same for elder. And also in terms of elder care, you can write off a number of things on your taxes even for childcare, but it's not equal for those that are in the elder care. And so I think that there's such a need for being able to deal with some of these issues because the middle class is really the ones that are affected the most. And what I'm seeing also is that families are in the position that they're trying to, as you said, draw down from all of their, whether they have a home and then they're not allowed to have any benefits to and being in a position of not being able to have any legacy for their children. So there's all kinds of issues that are really involved in this. Thank you.
Thank you for those great points, Lori. Our next comment is from John Brower.
Is that?
Can't hear John.
John.
Yeah, I just, actually, I'm somebody who just launched all my kids and is starting that older piece with parents. So I understand all of that. I think particularly on the IHSS home care side, I mean, you've got, I think, a real opportunity, and I know it's only a portion of the overall population, but are there things that the state in partnership with counties and others can do? One is I see a real need, largely it's voluntary for those folks who are coming into that. So mandating sort of training and stuff is kind of one of the pieces I know UDW and SEIU are trying to figure out. But the idea of one is there really needs to be an investment on, I think, the use of technology, potentially mobile learning and other ways for folks who are in fact doing care to be able to do something from their home. And I think the pandemic kind of only highlighted and maybe brought to fore some best practices in relative. So as the state looks at addressing the digital divide, I think that's actually one worthwhile investment as part of this is certification training that's both voluntary and available around better education techniques. And the second is figuring out how to create maybe on the actual care side for particularly home care workers and others that haven't been in this space, what I would call the equivalent in our world of industry valued credentials or micro badges that may be, if we can raise the floor, then on top of that, or also we can incentivize for different pieces out of this. And I think those are kind of just bigger frameworks of things, but I would hope, and that would require obviously partnership with both the public agencies, but potentially the adult ed and community college system and elsewhere. But I think this idea of, I've just been watching people trying to learn this stuff while grappling with their own personal situations to be able to have time and ease of learning, and even just learning how to learn, frankly, using technology, even their smartphone around it. So Tim, as we consider how the Workforce Board and the labor agency, that's kind of one area that I hope you all would build off of what you're doing with long-term care and
you're absolutely, you couldn't be more timely in your comments. In the final budget the legislature and governor signed was a multifaceted workforce investment, and my department was given $150 million to do training and certification for personal care. Not home health, not CNA, LVN, but the personal care, which we have in our state, as you probably know, a 5-hour health and safety, but nothing else around adult literacy, around skills building, dementia, mental health. And so thinking about thoughtfully what that content is, what the delivery methods are, and how it lattices up to wages is really the questions before us that we've been engaged with labor workforce about how do we set a partnership table with, yes, the providers, the recipients, the employers, really a solutions table is the concept that they've brought to us to think through how we make that direct care job, which is, as we all know, an essential job for all of us aging well. How do we make it a good paying job and even a career?
Thank you, John. Thank you, Kim. Senator Leyva.
Thank you very much, Angelo. Kim, thank you for that excellent presentation. And, I just wanted to say, we used to call it the sandwich generation, right? And then we always find a new way to say things, but it's the same problem and it's the same issue. And I wanted to say that, I think it's mostly women who give up their jobs. And then this affects them, as you said, when they go to retire because they haven't contributed, and God forbid their spouse dies or they get divorced. So we are affecting financially two different generations. And the other thing I want to say is who you elect matters. Just because someone has a D by their name doesn't mean that they are going to be good on these issues. We have had bills since I've been in the Senate that we can't get off the Senate floor. One of them was, we finally did, but it took forever. And this was a bill simply about leave, family leave, to care for an aging parent, to care for an aging loved one, to recover after you have had a baby. It didn't even require you to be paid. It just required that your employer held your job. And we couldn't get enough Democrats to get it off the floor initially. So I just always have to put that plug in. When people tell you they're going to run for office and they want your endorsement, ask them the hard questions. Ask them what they're going to do when something like this comes up for them to vote on, because that's how we get things done. If people won't do the right thing, meaning employers or whatnot, then we have to legislate that they do the right things. But we need the right people there to do it. So thank you for your report. It's very helpful. We have lots of work to do.
Thank you for your leadership and always championing families. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Senator Leyva. Thank you, Kim, and everyone for all of your engagement on these important issues. And we really appreciate it. There's a lot more work that needs to be done, surely. So we're now going to go into other business. Our next meeting of our full workforce board is going to be November 17th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Clemente, do we have any comments from the public?
No general comments from the public.
Okay, I can then entertain a motion to adjourn. I'm sure someone wants to adjourn. Senator Leyva.
I'll second.
Motions, Rebecca seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any abstentions or nays? All right, meeting is adjourned at 12:32 p.m. Take care, everyone. Thank you again for your time.